Welcome to the MuseCast, where we squeeze every last drop of inspiration out of Sunday's sermon.
I didn't do anything. I did nothing.
I don't know that anyone believes you. Dan, show them what's over your shoulder there. What's over your shoulder? Yeah.
Are you talking about this fine fur? I'm a collector of fine fur.
Yes, and, you are.
Yes. Yeah.
There you go. There you go.
That is from our live MuseCast episode that we did with Kevin and Paul. And that was a blast.
We did MuseCast live, and I can honestly say, people are like, "Did you know?" And I'm like, "Are you kidding?" No, I had no idea. I don't make this stuff up. I don't fake this. Like, I get genuinely caught off guard in some way, shape, or form every time. And so you were sitting right next to me, and I maybe was talking to the audience, like out in front, and then I turned to look at you, and you have that ridiculous mustache on. It was too funny. It was too funny. I love it. Well, hey, welcome to the MuseCast. Good to see you. Dan, you've been holding down the fort. You've been taking care of business through my illness and my lack of voice and just trying to get better, So thank you, sir.
Yeah, you are a fighter, because I tell you what, when we did the sermon practice and we were talking last week, I didn't think you were going to make it. I didn't think you were going to be able to do this sermon, but you sounded great on Sunday. So it all came together, but it sounds like it was kind of touch and go Sunday morning. Is that right?
It was touch and go. I started to feel not awesome again, but I was like, no, we're going to plow through. And then I had a moment of panic. I think it was toward the tail end of the sermon, though. I had a moment of panic when I really did need a drink of water, and I had my own cup up there, and I couldn't, there was fruit that got stuck in the straw, so no water came through, and I was like, well, if I pass out now, at least they've gotten most of the sermon. So.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, and that's one of the reasons why I don't like any fruit in my beverages. And you'd think I would learn, but whenever we go to a restaurant, they always put like a lemon wedge or an orange peel or a scoop of mashed potatoes or something in my beverage, and it's like, I don't want anything in my beverage. I'm getting food on a plate. The cup is for the beverage.
The liquid. You just want the liquid. Yeah.
Right.
I will always, this is what I've done. I would say maybe even going on for sure over a year, but maybe even 2 years in order to drink more water, I will put fruit in there. So there will be blueberries, strawberries, cherries. There'll be stuff in there. And so I think it was a blueberry that got stuck in the straw. So there was no liquid coming through. So good. But also bad when you desperately need a drink. So, but made it through. I'm trying to think, because it's been a couple of weeks since you and I have been, the last time we did MuseCast together was MuseCast Live. And so since then you've had a sermon, which was amazing. You wrapped up Unraveling Truth, and then you went on a little nature walk, a little nature journey. Let's just say, you and I, we aired our beef. We aired our MuseCast beef publicly in our sermon.
Yeah, it's so good to get that resolved. That's good to just put that behind us. And
I know we can move forward now.
Yeah, that's right.
I think I was concerned, but now I feel good. I feel like we're okay. Someone did approach me after the sermon to correct me, to say, actually, Clarence Creek Water Revival, I'm showing my age, they did it first. And I'm like, yes, you're correct. However, for me, it was Tina Turner. So that's what I go with.
Yeah.
All right. So Dan, we are done with Unraveling Truth. We are not in a series. We've got some things brewing. We're just kind of in a holding pattern, responding to some real-time stuff. And that's good and well. So you did your sermon, you wrapped up Unraveling Truth, and then I filled in for Greg this past week and did a one-off, which I don't know about you, but one-offs are hard.
They are. Yeah.
Because the possibilities are just too many. And just to try to, it took me a whole day just to kind of prayerfully land like, no, this is what we're gonna do. And then you have to go with it because Sunday's coming. So series for me are easier because the topic's decided pretty much. But so
well, I thought you chose wisely. I mean, I think we probably have, like you said, we have some things that are in the works right now, but ultimately we are moving into a series on the book of Revelation. And I felt like your topic, should I just start my summary?
Let's,
good. Yeah. Good.
Let's summary it. Let's see how you do.
Yeah, so I felt like your topic was perfect as a bridge from here to there, because and if I end up doing this, so I have a sermon ready in case it's needed, in case Greg isn't unable to be there. And I'm kind of in the same spot where I feel like I have a couple ideas of things to just kind of prepare ourselves for this series on Revelation. And I feel like your topic, abiding in truth, was the title of your sermon. I thought that's a great thing to dwell on and to keep in our hearts and in our minds as we approach the book of Revelation, because the book of Revelation does talk about and a lot of it is metaphorical, a lot of it is allegory and stuff like that, but it talks about, look, in this world that is run by Satan and during this spiritual war, things could get kind of chaotic and things could get maybe even the way that we don't want it to be. And so one of the things that you can do is to always be prepared to abide in Christ. And so I thought that was a great message, but I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. The sermon really kind of started by looking at this farewell discourse and looking at part of the farewell discourse in John. And it's so interesting because like the sermon that I have been working on, it's also right at the end, that one of the last things that Jesus says to his disciples. And so I think you and I are both kind of tapping into this same sort of thing, because as we're coming to the end for Jesus, he's giving like these important kind of lessons, like, hey, you'll need this now that I'm leaving. Until I come back, keep this in your heart and in your mind. And so you looked at the farewell discourse found, the passage that you were looking at is in John 13, 1-5. And part of that is he uses this vines and branches sort of analogy, and he says that he is the vine and we are the branches, and which is just a beautiful kind of analogy of our relationship to the source of life and to the source of growth and to the source of flourishing, and we're part of something that creates the fruit and the flourishing. We are not the tree ourselves, we are part of this bigger thing. And I just think that's good job, Jesus. It's a good analogy. However, it does raise some questions, because Jesus does talk about that the branches that do not produce will be cut off, implying that God's going to remove people who are not productive, which sounds very capitalist and American, right? But it doesn't sound very Jesus-like at all. And so I thought you did a great job of taking a look at that and looking at what those words might actually mean and what's going on there for real. And I love that you found this excerpt from this vineyard worker who talked about how, you don't cut off these low-hanging branches that are scraping along the ground. In fact, what you do is you lift them up. You give them a special type of attention so that they can produce. And I thought that was really insightful. And then the second part of tending to these branches is that they will be pruned. Which is a way of kind of and you give a few different kind of ideas here, but where God just kind of works those things and trims the deadness and helps the branches focus on the things that produce life, that produce vitality, that produce fruit. And so that's what God does. God works the branches that are unproductive by lifting them up, by giving them special attention, and then he tends to us and he helps us get rid of things that are dead weights, that get rid of things that are obstacles to the source of our real life and love and fruit. Um, And then you take a look at the word abide, and this is where you really kind of hone in on the heart of your sermon. And Jesus uses this word abide over 10 times, and you talk about that, how that means to remain in Jesus. When you abide in Jesus, you remain in Jesus. The word that you use is you settle into Him, or you lean into Jesus. And it's a type of intimate connection that we maintain with Jesus, and this is what Jesus is calling us to as He's leaving. That's exactly kind of as counterintuitive as it sounds. I'm leaving, so abide in me. Well, wait a minute, you're leaving, and so
Right.
what does that really mean? And so you talk a little bit about what that means, but you also talk about what hinders us from that, and then you talk about one of the things that hinders us is that we get distracted by other things, and the busyness of the world, power, all of that kind of stuff. And then you just talk about how abiding a little bit on my notes here. They're a little out of order, but I think this idea of, I really like the Brother Lawrence quote that you used.
Yeah.
It's such a great quote, and he talks about how he abides in Christ by simply giving this kind of special, silent inner attention to Jesus, and it's sort of this habitual sort of inner eye that he turns towards Jesus as he's doing dishes or mowing the lawn or whatever. He has this inner attention that he gives to Jesus, and it's this that empowers us and fills us with these resources that the Spirit provides for us as we have this inner attention toward God. And not only does it empower us, but I think it gives us that vitality and that full life that Jesus promises us. Let's see if there's anything else. Oh, and then you kind of wrap it up by talking about how all of this happens within community, and the ultimate goal, the real fruit, is how we love one another, and the love that we show toward one another. And so yeah, that I think that is. I probably missed a couple things because there's a lot in there, but I think it's such a great message for where we're at between series and going into the next series. And did I miss anything really big?
No. You did great, Dan. That was a good summary. There were a lot of like different aspects to cover. And then like, we always talk about like, oh, well, what did you leave out? And like, gosh, yeah, I could have definitely gone more into fruit and what that means. Cause so many people automatically go to works, which yes, works are important, but it's not just like, oh, so then they want to know, well, what works? And that people can get trapped in that. And then the community piece, there was a lot more that that we could have said about that, but you can't, there's only so much time, right?
Yeah,
and I wanted to make sure that we hit on the things that we hit on, and I felt it was important to set it up that way, just considering the time in which Jesus was saying these things. It feels like, if someone's about to leave you, like depart from you into eternity, it feels like if they are making an effort to say some things to you, that's important to pay attention to what's being said there. So you did not miss anything. That was a great summary.
Well, and it's because you have so much of what I love about your sermons is that there are so many I mean, you definitely have like this abstract discussion about, the farewell, discourse and all of that. But there's so many just like every day at the coffee table sort of kind of insights that you have in here. And so it's hard to cover it all. I was hoping to get at the kind of heartbeat of it. But yeah, it's just, there's so much wisdom in here. And I think it's a great sermon for where we're at right now. What I kept thinking about as you were preaching is I kept thinking about Acts 17:28, where Paul says that in him we live and move and have our being. And he said that, and I talked about this in my sermon, I think, where he created the universe and he created everything so that we might reach out for him, though he is not far from any of us. And so there's this sense in which, yet it's the farewell discourse. Jesus is leaving in one sense, but in another sense, he's not far from us. And so this idea that's on the face of it might seem kind of strange, that Jesus, abide in me, but I'm leaving. Seems kind of strange. in another sense, God is not far from any of us, and we can continue to abide in Christ despite that visual departure that we see Jesus leaving.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's good. It also kind of reminded me of okay. So Jeremiah 29:11, that famous verse that people have like tacked up on, their refrigerators or whatever. It's a great magnet, for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, but which is a great encouragement. The interesting thing is when that is being spoken over the people, it's like they're about to be in captivity, right? It's like,
Wow.
this like really not so great thing is coming. And he's like, but hey, just remember, I know the plans that I have for you, plans to prosper you and to give you a hope and a future. And so it's kind of like this, something's coming that's going to be difficult, but here's encouragement and here's hope. Hang on to this. And so so this kind of, and this happens a bit, but this kind of reminded me a little bit of that in a way, like, Jesus wasn't like, hey, you guys come here and like drawing some battle plans and strategies for how they're going to, like avert the authorities and become victorious. No, he's like, so here's this vine and branches and we're going to, hang out and I'm going to go. Actually, I'm going to go to this cross and it's going to look like defeat, but I'm going to be with you. They're going to kill me, but I'm going to be with you. Yeah. It's just really, he was an interesting guy, that Jesus.
Yep. Yes, he was. Yes, that's true. Well, hey, let me ask you, how did you feel like, as you're putting the sermon together and then it finally came together, did you feel like you kind of got across what you wanted to get across, or was there anything that you wanted to get across that you didn't? And what's your own assessment for how it went in terms of like what your original intention was for the sermon?
Yeah, so I would say bottom line, yes, because the abiding stuff was just something that was really heavy on my heart. In fact, I had that part first, was the abiding. But like I said a few minutes ago, there is definitely, like when you're crafting something like this and you're praying through it and studying and stuff, like these things pop up and you're like, ooh, that ties nicely, but you can't really like, because that's a whole nother sermon almost, right? Like,
Yeah.
And so just trying to get like the gist of things and try to tie it together. I think, so I would say the abiding was definitely that like bullseye for me. And then I would think secondarily would be the cut off / remove language, because more so than I maybe said in this sermon, I have had people believe that if they're not doing all the things just right, that God's just going to cut them off and toss them aside.
Yeah.
And that's sad to me. And so to talk about that a little bit was important to me. And then third, and this was at the end, and so just the idea of the community piece of it all, of like the vines like intertwining, and sometimes you can't differentiate between vines. And I think there's, again, that could be a whole nother sermon, but I definitely just wanted to like say, hey, also this is for us, because that was the sense that I got. So I think those 3 points were my goal. But for sure the abiding was the main point, and I feel good about that. And then it's always helpful when you hear back from folks like that they needed to hear that, or that it was really helpful to them. So that helps. Especially when, certain sermons are more teaching, and they're more instructive. And then certain sermons are more like encouraging, or like a more timely like word or something. I don't know however you want to categorize it. So it feels nice to know that I wasn't off my rocker.
Yeah. Well, and I what I like about it is that there was a teaching component there, and there was, you're illuminating like, what does it actually mean that God tends the vines? And, what does, because, and I know at Woodland Hills, we think that our picture of God is very important. And so when we find things that seem to create static with our picture of God, boy, it can really help when you can illuminate, no, the picture of God is right. And so there is that teaching component, but then also there is this practical daily living component. And I love the story that you told about the tornado, and just, being able to tap into that abiding kind of presence, even in the face of that, because, the world, we could we could go into 10 years of peaceful, warless bliss at any moment, but we could also go the other direction.
Absolutely.
And I had a good friend and mentor when I was really young, probably my first Christian sort of kind of person that I looked to for wisdom. And he said that, it's always easier to deal with temptation long before you get tempted. And I think that's true of a lot of things. It's easier to face crises if you've already thought about the potential crises in advance, because if let's say a tornado comes here, I can immediately will recall, this is where I can tap into that abiding in Christ and just resting in God's presence and resting in God's heart and what God can do, even in circumstances that neither God nor I want to happen. God can still protect me, and God can still, even if I'm not protected physically, my heart is protected, and my soul is protected, and my identity is protected, and my future is secure in God. And being able to live into that ahead of time, so I'm prepared for when those bad things happen, I think that's invaluable. So that's why I just love this message.
Thank you. Yeah, it's that verse really that keeps coming to mind of, in the world you will have trouble, but take heart because I've overcome the world. And like I said, and I didn't want to dwell on all the and this, once you list a few things, you kind of have to cut off because you can't list all the things, right? Because you'd be there all day, like all the ways in which this could go awry. But so I didn't want to dwell on that too much. But man, like you said, we could have, the climate could just, resolve itself. The oceans could become clean, and people can stop going to war with one another, and we could all just quit being polarized, and it's just bliss. That I guess that could happen.
Yeah.
However, there's a lot of other things that could happen that are the opposite of that as well. Right. And it does seem like that is occurring. Like, Dan, I literally just read an article about, I'm not even kidding you, sharks that have gotten a hold of cocaine off the coast of Florida because, drops were being made. And like, I guess they have like little GPS signals, and then like the courier comes and picks. Well, anyway, these sharks have gotten into these so Cocaine Bear was a movie, but these cocaine sharks are real. It's like, what the heck is nature is, seems a little angry right now, and people seem a little angry right now, and there is chaos all around. I don't think it catches God off guard. Don't think he caused it by any stretch of the means, but I don't think it catches him off guard. And I think it's just like this reminder, hey, chaos, remain and abide. Let me be the calm in the midst of all of that. So I also just want to quickly say, I love how you worded it. You said when our picture of God gets static. That is a great way to put that. I love that. Ooh, something's not quite right there. We need to adjust this.
What's funny about that is my buddy Randy and he was my college roommate, also the smartest person I know, super brilliant guy. And that's why I roomed with him, because I was looking for good students that I could learn to be a good student from.
You're so strategic, Dan.
Did I ever tell you how I graduated high school?
Let me see. There was some chocolates, a lake.
So he and I, he was really smart guy, and he was a great student, and I did learn a ton from him. But whenever something didn't seem right, if we were reading something or if we were in a discussion with somebody and they made a really bad argument, we would make static noises. We would go like that, like there's something off, like there's something not right about that argument. So we would always go like that. So
I like it.
Yeah.
Did the other people know what you and Randy were doing, or were they just like, these dudes are weird?
All that mattered was Randy and I. We
That's
were
right. Oh, I love it. I love it. I know that you have a really lovely prayer. I'm assuming it's lovely prayer.
I hope so.
For Nugget time.
Yes.
Right before we get to that, I just was wondering, from your perspective, like I said, I can't list all the things, but from your perspective, what are some things that maybe hinder us as humanity from leaning in, abiding, settling into Jesus in times of struggle and chaos?
Yeah, I think for me, I mean, it is a real struggle for me, and so that's another reason why I like messages like this. I think I tend to lean on my kind of analytic understanding of
Mhm.
reality, not in God's actual presence. So analytically, I believe that God is present, but I don't experientially, personally, kind of live as if God is right here all the time. And
Yeah.
so things like this sermon, Greg's book that you mentioned, Present Perfect, are really helpful for kind of motivators for me to, okay, now I live this way out. And so I think that's a big thing. I mean, so many of people who believe in God through an intellectual journey that leaves them compelled that it's true. And so a lot of people don't have like experiences that the Apostle Paul had where he was blinded off of his horse for 3 days, by God's presence. And so most of us don't have that. We have this intellectual journey. And so the hardest part is stepping from the warm intellectual hot tub into the cool swimming pool of swimming in the deep end with God. And that's it's a hard thing to do. And but I think that is what God, when he says abide 10 times, that's what he's saying. Yeah, these things, well, now abide in it. Like, in other words,
Yeah.
live it out, make it real in your day-to-day, moment-to-moment life. And so I think for me, that's the hardest thing.
Yeah. I'm so glad you said that, Dan. Thank you for sharing. I think that's a lot of people's story. Like, like we have this knowledge but in our reality sometimes is telling us something very differently. And so, yeah, to make that connection and to do that, make that switch is difficult, not always easy. So I'm glad that you brought that up. That's really cool.
Yeah. Good.
All right.
Well, what do you think? Do you want to share a nugget, or do you want me to jump right in?
How about I just share a brief little nugget, which will just probably be something I've already said. And then we can close with your prayer, because that feels like a good way to close out the show today.
Sounds good. That sounds good.
Awesome.
We don't have music yet for the Nugget dance. So it's just
we need to work on that. We need to check the budget, talk to the production team.
We
won't be having music.
Yeah, we probably won't. Yeah, so what's our budget here, Janice? Is it Kanye West, or is it Google public domain? Where are we at?
Where are we at? Yeah. Yes. Where are we at? Yeah. Do we need to, can we hire writers? Can we, are there musicians that we can pull in? This is the big thing.
Yes.
So for my nugget, again, it's easy because it was my sermon. So I think in the midst of whatever you are going through, and I don't mean that cavalierly. I'm not trying to be chalant, but I know that there are real things that people are going through and real struggles. And it's not just stuff out there. It's not just climate and the world. It's stuff right here. I know that it can be hard to take our focus off of the real crap that we're dealing with and put our focus on Jesus and lean into him. But I also know that when we do that, even if we just say, God, help me to switch my focus here, even if we could just take a moment to do that, I know that we can draw from his resources. We're experiencing chaos. We're experiencing fear. We're experiencing strife. We're experiencing illness. There's a ton of things. Again, can't name them all. But when we do connect into him, when we do settle into him, we can draw from his resources, which are peace and love and grace and patience and healing. When we are depleted, he is full and he can help to fill us up. So that's an encouragement to do that. I know it's not easy. I know that our stuff can seem very real and he can seem not as real because he's not just tangible, but the promise is that he actually is, And so if we could tap into that somehow, wire our imaginations to be able to do that, I think we would, it would help.
Yeah.
I think it would help.
Yeah, that's good. Well, I have this prayer. It's I don't like the title of this book. The book is titled the Complete Book of Christian Prayer. And I take offense at that because I pray all the time and I don't see any of my prayers in here.
None of yours are in there.
Right.
Okay.
So it's obviously not complete. So
incomplete.
But with that disclaimer aside, this is from Augustine, circa 354 to 430. So you're looking at 1600 years ago, quite a while. But he prays this, and I was looking for a prayer that really kind of had this idea of abiding in Christ and living with God, and Augustine sort of cries out to God in the same way that I might, hoping for that more tangible presence. And Augustine says this: "Come to us, Lord, work upon us, set us on fire, and clasp us close by. Be fragrant to us, draw us to thy love. Let us run to thee." And I think what I love about that prayer is the word fragrant really stuck with me. And Barbara and I, we went up and saw the Mississippi River, the head of the Mississippi River, where the Mississippi River starts. And there are these trails through the woods there. And a couple times we're like, what is that? And then we turn, and then there's like this flower, and we couldn't help but go over there and smell it. It was just like this very real thing about the flower that reaches out to us and draws us in. And just to be able to experience God in that way, that just acts upon us in such a way that draws us in, to the extent that we run to God. And this is such a beautiful image, and it's a great prayer that captures something important, at least in my own heart, about all of this.
Absolutely. That is beautiful imagery. And I say yes and amen to that prayer. I have a feeling people are going to ask for that prayer. So be ready to type that out for some folks.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Right.
I just don't know. I think that's going to come. So if you want to ask Dan specifically about that prayer, tune in at 4 p.m. when the show airs, and type it in the chat, and he'll get that to you guys. Also, don't forget, you can send in questions to the MuseCast at musecast@whchurch.org. We love getting the feedback from you guys and just connecting and relating to you guys in that way as well. And it's just great to be a part of this this crazy team, but this community, and just it's so great. I am so blessed. So we want to thank you guys for tuning in. Thanks for your support. Really good to see some of you guys in town a couple of weeks ago, and really great to always connect with you guys in the chat during the show. So
definitely
be blessed. Yeah.
Yep. See you guys.
Take care.